With coronavirus spreading, South Africans must be careful about how they react to government measures. That warning comes from Kat Walker. She's a South African currently living in Italy, the worst affected country outside of China, saying that we must not see the restrictions that have been imposed by the government as a free holiday or a time to party. Italy has recorded more than 2,500 deaths from COVID-19 so far, and it's rising by the dozen each day. It's become the worst affected country, as I was telling you, outside of China, which was previously the epicenter of the outbreak from about December last year. Well, Kat Walker is joining us via Skype from Italy tonight. Kat, evening to you. Thank you for being with us. So I'll get to the piece you've written about the COVID-19 outbreak in a moment, but I want to begin with how the restrictions, the lockdown in Italy is affecting the area where you are.
So the area that I'm currently in is a little bit farther north from where I'm ordinarily based. But if I can provide sort of a timeline of how it affected me, both up to where I moved up north and to when I was still based down in the slightly lower region. So I attend university in the Piedmont region, in the capital of Turin. And it was only around really like the 23rd of February that we started really feeling the effects of these government ordinances that were put in place to try and curb the spread of coronavirus. And it began as a lockdown on classes for universities as well as schools. But it was seen, I think, by the population and even by myself as more of an irritation as really a measure to protect us. People became quite frustrated with not being able to continue with the academic schedule, myself included. And it was also during this time that the courts were closed. And I received that information just based on a contact I had that worked in a court, and she informed me that all the court work had to be done from home. Around the 2nd of March, we returned to class, so there was a regional ordinance to say that we could continue with that. But around 2 days later, they once again closed the classes off, and then, as you know, about a week later, we went into a national lockdown. And up until the national lockdown, and indeed I would say up until a couple of days ago, I don't think it was properly taken seriously by the majority of the population, myself included perhaps even, in the sense that everyone was still very much moving out and about in the cities. When that first ordinance came through on the 23rd of February, I was in the center of the town when I heard about it, and we were in the process of doing several celebrations in the center of Turin itself. And people were out in their hordes celebrating, wearing masks, costumes for the specific celebration. And that really only started to taper off, I would say, a couple of days ago.
And interesting that you say that, Kat, because you reflected on similar behavior in South Africa when President Ramaphosa on Sunday night announced the restrictions on travel, large gatherings. We did see people on video that was said to have been taken in Braamfontein, Johannesburg, for example, filling the streets in celebration because there'd been a suspension of lessons at university, for example. And you say that rather reduces to the measures. I beg your pardon, let me get my thought around this. You're saying that makes the measures not only insufficient, but wholly counterproductive.
Yes, definitely. So obviously the shutting down of schools is meant in gesture to be a halt on the spread of coronavirus, but indeed if we are then taking in our masses to the public spaces, that is going against the grain of what we actually want to do. And as I said in my article as well, I completely understand the reaction because this feels like something that is very far away. It feels like something that can't affect us, especially us as the youth. But in fact, it's not, as I said in my article, it's not about something affecting us directly in that we may fall sick ourselves, but it's about protecting the rest of the population. And while for me and for my fellow students and the fellow youth in Italy, our primary concern is obviously that of the elderly in Italy, who form up to about 35% of the population. In South Africa, there's a much greater concern of immunocompromised population demographic.
And just in the shift in attitudes among yourself and the other students who were not taking the outbreak in Italy as serious as it's proven to be, did you find that reality began to sink in with the rapid rise in infections and deaths?
I would definitely say so, because I think it was, so around the 23rd of February, we were only still looking at a handful of cases. I think the number was around 115 or close to that figure. And by the 2nd of March, we were looking at 1,000 cases. So the astronomical kind of incline in those cases really, I think, sort of encouraged the population to take it more seriously. But also in terms of the deaths, I mean, just an hour ago, we heard the news of today's figure for deaths, and we now have nearly 3,000 people that have lost their lives. There was 475 deaths today in Italy, and I think that it's really something that's starting to weigh on the population as something that's incredibly serious. But I do think that it should have been taken seriously a long time ago, and that's what I'm really trying to get across to the South African population, is that it doesn't need to get as bad as what it has in Italy if we take the right measures from the get-go in South Africa.
Kat Walker, South African currently living in Italy.